So we're rewiring what's already out there. We're taking the financial system and instead of putting a limit on your credit, we're putting a limit on your credit using CO2 emissions.
Welcome to Banking on Air, the official Vacuum Labs podcast covering payments, digital banking, fintech, and the technology that powers them. We believe that the future is in communities when it comes to digital transformation in financial services, and we'll be sharing our thoughts with you, but hopefully also getting your input along the way. I'm here today with Doconomy, which is part of the larger, broader banking ecosystem, building services and products around sustainability. We at Vacuum Labs are very proud that we had a chance to cooperate with them on one of their latest products, the 2030 calculator. Welcome, gentlemen. Can you please introduce yourselves for the audience and let's get started?
Thank you so much for having us today, Marcel. My name is Mathias and I'm currently the CEO of Doconomy.
My name is Johan Pihl. I'm head of innovation at Doconomy.
Many people might not have heard about Doconomy. What is the elevator pitch, or what's the explanation to your 6-year-old daughter or son? How do you explain what Doconomy does?
Doconomy aims to provide digital solutions to help us all live in a more sustainable way. The bottom line is we believe that people want to contribute to solve the climate crisis, to save the planet. And most of us are sometimes hindered by insufficient tools to do
It's
things.
almost like we connect your financial life to the impact on the planet. And we think that type of awareness, understanding especially how your consumption impacts the planet, is a very good starting point for change. We think that individuals, especially consumers, have an opportunity to accelerate the shift towards a sustainable future.
All right. So basically what you're doing is you're looking at people's financial history and financial behavior and trying to match that to their aspirational goals of sustainability and really keeping the planet alive for future generations. Is that a fair summary?
The insight is that everything you buy has impact on the planet. And you need to understand that impact, and you need to understand your carbon footprint linked to consumption to make more informed purchase decisions over time. That's what we want to achieve.
So basically, the way we do it today is in 3 legs. So one leg is our mobile banking service in Sweden that's called Do Everyday Climate Action, which is a mobile banking service in part similar to many others, but with one very important point of difference, and it is that the climate is relevant in everything, in every transaction, in your savings account, in the way you can offset, in the way you can calculate your impact. And these calculations that we use in the mobile banking service, we also sell our secret sauce to others, because we understand that to tackle this problem, we need to engage many people in a lot of organizations. So we enable any bank in the world to use our methodology to also engage and explain to their clients the impact of every purchase. And on top of that, we have enabled every brand to calculate the carbon footprint of their products, which is an extremely important and component if we are to enable carbon labeling of products, which would be a way to also educate consumers around the impact of their lifestyle choices already on the shelf.
Yeah, that's the short pitch.
Was that the initial plan, to be provider to others, to other banks, to other suppliers? Or did you just start off with Do, or the first bank product, and figure it out as you went?
We started with a concept. I mean, Mathias and I, we have a background in marketing and advertising. So we were very convinced on a conceptual level of the type of service that we wanted to provide. But we realized that more than 2 years ago, we were pioneers in an undefined market space. So realizing that, we also felt the need to accelerate and help expand the very market where our service was supposed to be relevant. We decided early on that developing a business-to-business offering was very much in line with our long-term strategic goal. Basically building the very market that we tried to be part of.
I think it's a very interesting question, because the feedback we're getting, and to build on what Johan is saying, is that per se we are creating the market, we're creating the space, but we're also enabling competitors to enter into the same space. But we choose to see it rather as collaborators than competitors. And sometimes we meet people out of a financing perspective that say, well, you're crazy, you're giving away your secrets to others, they will compete with you. And by saying that, we understand that these are not the investors we should talk to, because they think that we can save everything through one component, one solution, one platform, one company, and that's not the case. It has taken a long time and many companies and many people to get in the position we are with the problem we're facing. In order to tackle that, we need to engage a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of knowledge to enable the insights needed for people to understand the impact that they have, but also the opportunities that a change of lifestyle or other purchase decisions can lead to out of a positive perspective. We're not here to judge, we're here to help.
And I think there's a great sense, going back to this decision of actually developing a business-to-business offering, and per se inviting competitors, you have to realize the long-term purpose here. Addressing climate change is a huge undertaking, and it requires a multitude of companies, brands, governments coming together. So for us to offer this ability to measure climate impact on transaction level and also creating a standard around that is what we felt was needed.
Yeah. So this sort of reminds me of how now governments around the world are trying to establish infrastructure to support sustainability. So it's not really about just competitors in the market space trying to who's going to build the best solar panel, but it's rather about the governments around the world trying to build the systems, the energy grids, to support a more democratic, a more distributed system of infrastructure, which doesn't rely on a singular player. And how you're describing your system or the way you're classifying things, it reminds me a bit of that. You're not obviously a government institution, but there's an infrastructure play here, very much like we're seeing with open banking around the world, where banks are now almost having to become more open to integrate others or to enable the creation of banks that weren't possible in the past. I obviously have read up a lot on Doconomy. When we started working together, I learned a lot. But can you give a bit of a description of how that calculation works and how you do it? What the, maybe not necessarily the secret sauce is, but how it's all put together?
We try to make the most out of the data at hand. And our ambition is threefold. Firstly, we wanted to provide a calculation that everyone could use and everyone could understand in a very broad perspective. So it's a very wide horizon where we can engage many people in understanding that every action has a reaction. In order to do that and to scale that seamlessly, we use the data that is within the transaction. The transaction data tells us a few different things: who you are, where you've been shopping, how much you've been spending, time and date, and so forth. With that data in mind, which is the category data, we graded each category, making use of leading financial market data and in collaboration with the Standard & Poor. We put a carbon score on every transaction you made. So we know that if you've been in a floral shop, we can address that transaction with the impact by floral shops and the spend that you have done. Or if you're at the gas station, we know that as well. What we don't know is if you've been buying gas in the floral shop, then you would have to recategorize that yourself. Otherwise, you would get a faulty carbon score on that specific transaction. Next level, of course, would be to connect the individual company's carbon score to the very transaction at that specific company, which is short-term, of course, product development. And the third layer would be to calculate the carbon footprint of the products, the line item data on the receipts. However, then we're entering into another data stream. Then we're leaving the transaction data and entering the receipt data. And there is also a few other challenges around that in regard of integrity and so forth. But that's going to happen as well. So we're very hopeful about that development. And to enable that, we developed the 2030 Calculate. What is important to understand is that we're trying to make use of the efficiencies in the existing systems to care for the fragilities in the ecosystem. So we're rewiring what's already out there. We're taking the financial system, and instead of putting a limit on your credit, we're putting a limit on your credit using CO2 emissions. And the 2030 Calculator, which we had tremendous support from you guys at Vacuum Labs in working around, is the very key to unlocking the potential of carbon labeling on product level, which would then be the third step out of connecting your consumption to your impact.
Just to add to that, I think we started with the credit card, knowingly understanding that there was a restricted access to granular data. It's meant only to provide data on category level. But we thought as a vehicle or a tool that you use every day, that it was a great starting point for establishing a dialogue with the user. We took the opportunity to reshape the credit card to something that would enable the cardholder to become more responsible. Now we're adding layers. The next big step for us is receiving receipt data, which means that you receive data on product level. Now, what we realized when we started discussing that was that very few brands actually have these calculations in place. Being pioneers in this market space, we saw that we had a responsibility to provide a tool for brands to calculate the impact on product level, which is now what we're doing with the 2030 calculator, which is something we built together with you guys. What's astonishing is that, honestly, we couldn't imagine the type of response we're getting. So we're having companies from all around the world calling in, not only using the calculator, but interested in co-creating an even bigger, stronger platform, enabling brands to calculate on product level. So it's an extremely interesting situation. Now, as I said before, this is in line with our long-term business strategy. So it becomes a more granular carbon footprint for each individual, not only on transaction level.
What I really liked about your approach from a business strategy perspective is you're not trying to boil the ocean, if you will, immediately. Often when we speak to companies, when they come to us, they have a grand idea that they want to achieve. And when we ask about what's the MVP, what's the first thing that you need to build to move to the next step in your grand goal? And if that answer is, well, all of it is the MVP, that doesn't really help, because that doesn't move anybody. Even if you have the funding to build something massive, it takes a tremendous amount of time to build it. And by the time you build it, the market might have already got in front of you. So what I really loved about the fact that you did build the calculator, it was a piece of the Lego puzzle that you guys wanted to build that fills in some of the gaps that you're seeing now. And you're obviously moving towards that receipt level, but you're not there yet. So you're building sort of the frameworks and the Legos for it.
You talked about the infrastructure needed, and this is all about the infrastructure. We cannot only look at our short-term business strategy. We need to look at how to accelerate the whole market, because once we do that, our service becomes more relevant. So it's an interesting way. I think you could see this type of situation with for front runners like Tesla or any company that's first ones out to actually define that market space needs to have a responsibility on infrastructure level as well. So it's not a typical business model. It's purpose driven.
Yeah. So the calculator is out now. It's going to be growing. It's going to have the support of more brands, more companies. What's going to happen next without revealing the stuff that you don't want your competitors to know?
I think that it all comes down actually to a lot of brands engaging, and more will do. And that's in a way proving our point. It's a whole infrastructure that needs to be rewired. And Johan has this saying early on in the process, we were discussing with some people around the general ability to redirect the efforts of many. So where do you think is the best place to be if there is a car speeding off a cliff? Where is the best place to be to stop that car? Of course, it's inside the car, because you can pull the brakes. And that's exactly the same rationale for the infrastructure. You need to be in the infrastructure. You need to be the infrastructure in order to direct it elsewhere. And that infrastructure consists of many stakeholders. And brands are key components and drivers in that change. So the future of the 2030 calculator has two crucial components. At the time right now, we're blown away by the success of it, but there's two components. One is, of course, the increase of data, the precision in the data and the richness in different data points. The other is the number of brands using the calculator to get results out of it. The results are all good, but the effects of the results is carbon labeling. And carbon labeling basically turns every product into a textbook for sustainable change. So from the inside of the infrastructure, more and more components in the very infrastructure are getting engaged around this. And by doing so, it's increasing the hit rate, the efficiencies, and the relevance of the very calculator they use to drive the change. So it's a good spiral.
A big potential is offering certifications of different levels. So I would say that's something we're looking into. We're also looking into different new aspects of measuring recycling policies or warranties and so on, which is a really interesting potential. So things are happening. Honestly, it's all about co-creating a very dynamic and strong platform to help brands perform these calculations. Most of the ideas is from feedback from brands. They are very eager to contribute to this platform. And that was the initial idea, was to get out there with something that would inspire others to help build.
Given the feedback we've had, we are tempted to rebrand it from the 2030 calculator to the 2030 collaborator, because basically that's what it is, a platform for collaboration where different brands help each other to communicate carbon footprint in precision to every user, to every consumer. And that is being at the very core of the infrastructure of consumption. We've been there with the transaction data out of a credit card perspective, which is a very good vehicle for change. But we can also get on the price tag, communicating not only the monetary value on the goods, but also the impact on the planet of its production.
So looking at this from the perspective of a founder who's now just jumping onto the journey of starting something in the sustainability space, how would you see that they would start collaborating with you, whether that's a fintech or a sustainable merchandise or product business, fashion business? How would they get started with you? How would they start collaborating with you as part of 2030 Collaborator?
I think that there's definitely room for improving our platform. And I think there's many startups and people out there that could think of ways of developing this. The most important part is that any collaboration is to align well with the overarching purpose of this, which is it's for free. It cuts down on the time spent of calculating on product level dramatically. We're talking about a few minutes compared to many weeks per product. We have really stepped away from any business model that would think of making money on the calculation level, because so that's core to us. I think anyone that wants to contribute needs to understand that we're trying to create a standard. We're trying to create a mutual understanding of how we could accelerate the capability of carbon labeling. That's the most important issue. But there's definitely room to develop services that could be part of this project. I'm quite sure. There's also ideas around offsetting, obviously. That's really interesting. We notice also that there's a really interesting connection to traceability in terms of specifying traceability, and those types of companies that are really developing services around that could be really interesting. Once again, just to repeat myself, you need to align with the purpose. You need to understand that it's not about making money in providing the tools for the calculation. You could definitely think of layers on top of that, which could be profitable, but not on creating the very standard.
Switching gears ever so slightly, you mentioned that we as Vacuum Labs helped you build out part of the 2030 calculator. What was the thinking from you from an organizational perspective to start collaborating with an external partner like ourselves instead of potentially building this in-house?
We've known about you for quite some time, and you have been top of our list based on your experience in financial services. And I think that this type of project was actually perfect to be handled by an external partner. You have to understand that we are very much busy building our core service, which is especially the app that is connected to the credit card, which is a huge undertaking in itself. And we're also developing our API for our business-to-business offering. So we identified early that this platform or this calculator would be an excellent project to partner up with Vacuum Labs. And that was a perfect match, I think.
And I think it's important also to remember, we have worked with several providers over the time, but Vacuum Lab is actually the first one that we regard as a partner, because in this project, which is a very tough task, it's a hard nut to crack. It's not as much about the challenge we have in front of us in trying to solve this and enable brands to do this, as it's important who we have by our side trying to resolve this issue. In all fairness, without the skill sets and the capabilities of vacuum labs, we wouldn't be in such a good place that we are now. So we are extremely grateful for the collaboration, and we are super excited about what's to come. Because once you find some partner that understands your needs and your ambitions and the challenges ahead, someone that fully understands that and commits to addressing them together with you, you should really cling on to that partner, because that partnership itself has tremendous value even before addressing the next challenging issue.
Just to add to that, I think that for us, we believe that it's a question of speed and quality. And we worked with many external developers, and it's either or. And with vacuum labs, we believe that we have speed and quality. And speed is essential here. When building something like this, for us, if it took a year, it would be useless. We need to act now. We're building it because we're the first ones to do it. We enter the market early. We usually do it in a beta phase or a prototype, and we build from there. So we're not afraid of launching concepts that then go into further development. But for that, you need to find a partner that understands the rules of the game, so to speak. That we are definitely doing that. And for that, you need speed.
Thank you very much for that. We're so happy that really this brought the value we needed. And I'm really so happy about the fact that you guys really wanted to go a gradual approach, like really build it out, get it out in the market, test it out, and move on from there, as opposed to trying to go to a grand vision that would take years to achieve and potentially be late, as you said.
Yeah, you never know. Like I said, this is an interesting market space because it's not defined. Everyone is eager to highlight the potential, but we are definitely the ones that are putting services out there first. And that's why it's so important to have a sense of clarity when working on projects together, because it's all about speed.
Yes. So for those who would like to know more about the 2030 calculator and about what you're doing, or potentially would want that credit card that you offer, how could they sign up? How can they become a part of it?
We have on the website, to begin with, you can connect with us. Out of a brand perspective, that is one way. Out of a media perspective, if you would like to extend the reach of these opportunities and abilities, that's another way. And of course, in regard of data contribution, and if there is other points of contact where we can collaborate, we're super happy to do. There is a lot of companies out there with a lot of good people on board that wants to drive positive change, that wants to enable their consumers to understand their impact, or want to use their data on behalf of others to make this calculator more granular. Just reach out, visit Doconomy.com or visit 2030calculator.com. You'll find the contacts there. So we're sitting by our computers waiting for someone to get in touch.
So all of these links will be in the description of the podcast. So anybody who sees this can directly link to it. Johan and Mathias, thank you very much for your time today. This has been very fun and exciting. Of course, if anybody's interested, they will reach out, and I look forward to more collaboration in the future with us at Vacuum Labs.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Marcel.
I would like to thank everyone for listening. We're back soon with another war story from inside the vacuum. Please subscribe to Banking on Air on all the major podcasting platforms and on YouTube. Take care and have a wonderful week, everyone.